This is Secrets to Win Big, your roadmap to sustained growth. Brought to you by Arjun Sen, founder and CEO of Zen Mango, top brand growth driver, and a former Fortune 500 executive who has been called one of the most marketing intelligent minds in the business. Find him at zenmango.com. And now, here's your host, Arjun Sen.
Welcome to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen. This is Arjun. And I truly have the best seat in the house because I get a chance to talk to leaders from all walks of life all over the world. And in that spirit, today, it's truly a personal pleasure and honor to welcome my VIP guest, Monishi Sanyal, who all of us lovingly call him Monishida, and I'll get to that in a second. Monishi Sanyal, founder, board member, and chief evangelist at IIT Startups. We'll talk a lot about IIT Startups and the impact IIT Startups is making in the world tomorrow. He's also the founder and CEO of Intersoft Corporation. Monishida, as his fans worldwide call him, has over the last 20 plus years made high-level impact on organizations like PanIIT and IIT Madras and beyond. Welcome to Secrets to Win Big, Monishida.
Hey, thank you.
So Monishida, first and foremost, congratulations on an incredible career marked with great impact and give back. But I want to talk about IIT Startups because it's a legacy project which every person I talk to raves about how it is changing the world. So what was the vision behind starting this?
In 2017, I kind of retired after an open heart surgery, and I decided I'll spend my time in a more worthwhile manner by not doing a for-profit business, but doing a non-profit activity. And when I was surveying certain activities for my past legacy, because I had founded the PanIIT Alumni Association in 2003, and a lot happened to that organization. That organization today is 450,000 members strong worldwide. It's grown by leaps and bounds. And I was trying to look out for what did we do and where were the shortcomings. And one of the areas which the founding of PanIIT did was it suddenly made IIT is a household name in the US, where earlier people would think we were labor arbitrage programmers that came from India. All of a sudden, they were confronted with this new viewpoint that we were entrepreneurs and we were creating jobs in America for the American people in large numbers. So that was a changing tone, after which our startups and entrepreneurs had a much easier time getting money. Before that, the pioneers, people like Vinod Khosla, Desh Deshpande, Suhas Patil, all of these guys, they had to go through a very rough time getting money. But after that, it became relatively easy. So in 2017, which is about 14, 15 years after I started PanIIT, I was talking to a number of investors, venture capitalists and all that I referred many IITians to you. And what did you make of that? They said almost uniformly, they said, look, the IITians are second to nobody when it comes to technology and their depth of knowledge in engineering. But when you're trying to create a business beyond the technology, you got to have a better understanding of business. Fundamentals, things like how to build a product plan, positioning in the market, starting from the ideation, positioning in the market, how to raise money. And our nerdy IITians typically hated raising money, hated doing business development. But those were certain weaknesses that came out. And they told me, you IITians have been very successful, but it falls short. It could have been better. At that time in 2017, when I had done a survey, I found that the IITs were the fourth largest unicorn generators in the world after Stanford, Harvard, and Berkeley.
What is unicorn generator?
A unicorn is $1 billion company, valuation of $1 billion. So, I found that we were fourth. And so that really, it sort of stunned our entire group. They were so ecstatic that they had no idea that we had come so far, that we were the fourth, after these renowned universities. And I was a kind of somewhat, I wouldn't say disappointed, but dismayed that the IITians are the smartest people on the planet. How come they're number 4? So we identified the weaknesses, we identified their shortcomings, which was in the business area, and I said, no, that's a good charter to address. That's a very good, target to try and fix. So in 2018 beginning, we launched IIT Startups here in Silicon Valley. And we had over 420 people who turned up. Most of them were investors. But surprisingly, there were 200 plus startups that showed up. So I was, it was a tidal wave, and it sort of really shook me to the ground. It took me a while to build a good mentor base. And in building that mentor base, we were lucky that Silicon Valley has had a long history of startups. So finding the talent was not difficult. And
so you found the talent, 200 people showed up, you had mentors. What else did it make it one of the top startup startings for US?
Basically, when you're trying to build an accelerator, which I would call this an accelerator, you need 3 ingredients. You need a critical mass of startups, you need a critical mass of mentors, and a critical mass of investors. These 3 ingredients produce that magic formula called a startup. So we definitely had, 200 startups is a lot. And mentors, I was able to dig deep in Silicon Valley, and I got 120 mentors, of which I've currently only utilized maybe 50 or 70 mentors to date, because we rotate them sometimes, and we run several cohorts, about 7 cohorts, 6 cohorts, and the 7th one is ongoing right now. So we were able to find this and create a good ecosystem for the startups. And as on date, we've been in operation for 3.5 years, but I started the cohorts about 3 years ago in the middle of 2018. So in these 3 years, we have graduated 65 startups. Graduated means taken them through the full mentoring course, graduated 65 of them, of which 6 got acquired and most have got funded, which is a good KPI to chase. This momentum, Silicon Valley is stabilized. Now the next goal for us was to open up in India, and which is what we did September this year.
Yeah, so that's the part where I want to pause for a second.
Yeah, sure.
Talk about US. So in US, once you have got 6 acquired and 60 who are getting investment, and that's the KPI. So long term, what would be a KPI, Monishi, that you would look at in 5 to 10 years before we talk about India?
It's a percentage game. You want to make sure. Look, normally very few. When you look at other accelerators, I would say only Y Combinator's has the kind of numbers that we've got in terms of ratios. So we are getting there. I think we can do a lot better, but the name is spreading. Ultimately, it's a question of today. The VCs come to me and say, "Hey, next time you have a demo day, please don't forget to call us. We want to be invited." And earlier, when we started, we used to go looking around for VCs. Now, we were fortunate from the 2003 launch of PanIIT, the IITians have made a big name in the Valley. Today, there are over 14,000 IITians in Silicon Valley, and almost all of them are in tech, and many of them are in key positions in Silicon Valley corporations. So it tells you the fertile ground we've got. If a startup wants to test its product and we send them to a CXO of a company who is an IIT, and we say, this guy wants to run a pilot or a beta, would you please give him a chance? He is most welcoming because that loyalty factor was very, very strong. And my original message to the mentors was, look, we all got a very heavily subsidized education in India, and the Indian taxpayer paid for that. Apart from donating money back, why don't you also help in training up the next generation of entrepreneurs from the IITs and make them a success? Because the more successful they are, the more money they can give back, and the more we will be able to reach our goals of paying back that debt that we owe to the taxpayers of India.
So that makes me transition to India. So at what point did you think you wanted to take IIT startups from US to India? And what are the different challenges that you faced in India compared to US?
Look, India is bubbling. Okay, it's the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. After US and China, India is the next. But if you look at the tempo, the acceleration of activity, India is number one. Today in India, there are 50,000 startups, 50,000. I mean, it's a mind-boggling number, but this is a figure I got from Invest India. But again, it could be startups in all sorts of different areas. Our focus for IIT startups is really software or hardware products. We are very focused in that line. I mean, if you're opening a restaurant, that's not a startup for us. But we are looking at a very, very narrow focused technology line. So even there, each of the IITs are producing between 200 to 500 startups. I mean, that itself gives me a captive audience of over 2,500 startups.
Wow.
Now, can we cope with that? I mean, I thought Silicon Valley launch was a tidal wave. This is not a tidal wave. This is a tsunami, absolute tsunami. You know, it's hit me so hard. And we launched on 18th of September this year. And I'm still grappling with that problem because unlike Silicon Valley, India doesn't have a long history of product startups. India's been long at the game of services, but not in products. So in products, for me to find that many mentors, and by the way, just to step back a bit, we do general workshops for large groups of people, like 100, 200 people at a time. So that many guys who are even dreamers and wannabes, and they want to get into the program, they join that to see what it is all about. And then we counsel them whether they are really cut out for doing a startup. But when it comes to mentoring, it's a one-on-one job. Every startup is given a dedicated mentor. Now, most of these mentors, many of them have made over $100 million. I mean, they don't need to do this, but they're doing it out of love for, their passion for doing something for India, giving back to the country that really launched us, so to say. So
let me pause you there. You're talking about the mentors. For each of those three, let me ask you very clear criteria. So what are criteria? And I'll go one by one. First, let's talk about mentors. What are key criteria that you look in a mentor that makes him or her successful?
Well, ideally speaking, we would like to have a mentor who's done a startup before from inception to exit. That would be the ideal condition, but sometimes you can't get, which is what we're trying to address in India, we can't get that many of those people. So we look at functional specialists. Let's say, if you talk about fundraising, there are people who are specialized in raising money they are specialized in negotiating term sheets. So we get these people. Then we got, let's say, marketing. We get business development specialists who are specialized in either B2B marketing or B2C marketing, and we get them to the, now they may or may not have done a startup. They might have been a part of a company or a part of a startup or a part of a larger corporation where they do this kind of work and they are familiar with that. So we try to mix and match. As I'm saying, my ideal combination is the person who's done it himself as a startup. That would be the ideal mentor.
And what is the ideal mentee or a candidate?
Well, the mentee, our condition is a little wider because we are a public domain nonprofit organization. So we only insist that any startup must have at least one IIT co-founder to avail of our free education, and we don't take any stocks either. You know, it's totally free. Okay, and we depend on the donations that we get for a lot of VCs who have seen a lot of success with the IITians, and they want to back us up, take it forward. Now, of course, a new program has started where our current president, Manoj Goyal, has started a program on called Guru Dakshina. That means, you know, you've taken this, would you not like to give your teacher something back? You know, so people are donating stocks. Okay, the stock is worth nothing till one day, if that startup becomes the next Google, you know, we will have a lot of money for infrastructure building, and you know, we would ideally like to give seed grants to all the startups, all which today we can't afford, but someday I believe we will be able to afford it.
Yeah. And what is the criteria for a VC that you look for?
The VCs, they come in, the investors come in different categories. There is the early stage, what they call friends and family. The next phase is the friends and family. These fellows organize themselves. Then there are the angel financiers, people who could typically go up to about $500,000. Then there are the venture capitalists who come in, and they have a range. You know, some we track the VCs depending on what is their low-end investment, what's the high-end investment, what's the average investment, are they platform agnostic, or you know, some VCs will only invest in security and cloud, somebody else will invest in some other category, some other investors invest in vertical markets like healthcare and things like that. So you know, we categorize all the investors, and the third category of investor is the corporate venture arms. Now, every company, again, you will notice that in Silicon Valley, the biggest acquirers of startups are large companies, whether it's an Oracle or a Google or a Cisco. These are the kind of companies that acquire startups. And 90% of our startups have been acquired and not gone IPO. IPO is a very difficult route, but they've preferred to get acquired, you know, earlier in the game. So that's, yeah.
So here's a question, because so many of us sit in our couches and dream of being the next Zuckerberg as you go through. You are at a very unique position, Monishi. You are at a place where not only you have tactically been instrumental in building this, but also you're the visionary. You have taken a seat back to see how it's growing. So what would be your advice to, let's say, an Arjun Sen who is listening and I want to be a startup? What would be a few questions you would ask or an advice you would give that will literally change that person's life?
Well, for startups, we first of all have to see whether they have a reasonably fundable idea, number one. Number two, they have to have passion. Number three, they got to be willing to learn. So there are people who are very adamant about what they want to do, and you know, if you tell them to pivot this way or that way because the market dynamics are moving, they are kind of unwilling to do it, and that doesn't make for a good startup. So you know, you got to have a lot of flexibility. I mean, you have the passion, but passion with flexibility. In other words, you can't be so wedded to an idea that you say, I will only do this. And even if I see the market moving away, I'm not going to make course corrections. That would be a very, very wrong approach.
So before I ask you a follow-up question, I was talking to quite a few people who love you to describe you in one word. And the word that I got unanimously from nearly everyone I talked to is the word passion. Is anything you do, you are all about passion. So I want to go back to the first criterion. You talked about the three criteria. The first one is a fundable idea. Each one of us look at our own babies and think they are the cutest and the most amazing babies. So how do you get some validation that the idea that I'm bringing to you is fundable? Like, are there any criteria that you use to help people see through that?
Yeah, there are criteria. Now it's there in our course material. What is the total addressable market? What's the market that you think you're targeting? And within that, how much do you think you'd be able to get for yourself? But basically, if a startup is aiming to go to a venture capitalist, they have to make sure that their multipliers are high. Because as an example, a VC invests in 10 companies, 10 startups, 9 will fail, 1 will make it. And with that 1, the VC should be able to pay back his limited investors, his limited partners should be paid back, So it is not, if you do a service business, the multipliers are much smaller, and more often than not, it becomes a lifestyle business. And if it becomes a lifestyle business, the fellow is making a couple of $1 million a year and is quite content. He is not shooting for 100+ million or $1 billion company. Now, that is really not our sweet spot. That's not what we are targeting for. There are other innovation courses and entrepreneurship courses in the IITs where they teach that. But we are for the big multiplier category. I wanted to get back to the India story, though, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So in India, building the mentor base is, I think, my current biggest challenge. So I've reached out to all the IITs to give us names of mentors. And currently we are running cohort 2 of India with cohort 7 of the US concurrently, where we are using mostly US mentors, and the India mentors, because it's their first exposure, they're sitting in as observers just to get the hang of the style. But beyond the style, they've got to be able to modify or customize what we say in the US, because the American market has a certain requirement. It's got its own characteristics. Similarly, the American investor, the VC, has got a certain kind of mindset. Now, the Indian mentors have to modify whatever we tell them for the Indian market and for the Indian investor, or companies who are there, that what is it that they look for? Example, in the US, on our demo day, we allow our startups to do a 4-minute elevator pitch. Okay. In India, it might be different. Who knows? It might be 6 minutes. But by the way, all of this information is available on our website. If you go to www.iitstartups.org and go to the library section, towards the bottom, you will see demo days. And it is open to the worldwide audience, because we are nonprofit. We don't charge anybody. You don't have to pay a fee to get into our website. You can watch the thing. You can watch all the workshops and then decide, what, you can watch it at your own leisure and then decide, hey, should I get into this game at all? Is this for me, or it's not for me? So as I'm saying, back to the Indian challenge, building the mentor base is critical, because India is just boiling over with startups right now. And we have decided that, look, quality is more important than quantity. We want to be the Y Combinators of the non-profit world. Okay. So therefore, we are going to take limited number of startups. In this cohort, I think we pulled in 70 startups. there are many more who are banging at the doors, but we're starting with 70. And we'll ultimately cull the number down to about 10 to 12 that will go through for demo day. Because at a typical demo day, the investors have patience for about 1 to 1.5 hours, and then you have to allow them time to go around and meet each startup. So that's the kind of funnel we start. We start with the initial group of 70 and bring them down to about 12, and that goes through for demo day. Then the next cohort and the next cohort. As we get more mentors in India, I think we'll have to run more demo days. Now, in the US, we started in a single location in Silicon Valley. And now, one thing that has happened because of COVID, we were compelled to go into remote mentoring and virtual demo days. Mm-hmm. So this happened by compulsion, but now it's turned out to be a good thing because we are able to run our mentorship courses anywhere across the US. We've opened up 6 branches. We've told all the branches that, send us your startups and we can handle them from here. Earlier, those locations, even places like Boston and New York and all, they didn't have the critical mass that Silicon Valley has. So we said, just send us the startups. We will centrally organize a pool here. And now we're even doing it for India, So that is one good thing that has happened because of the COVID.
So Monishi, I want to take a step back.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate to know you over the last 15 years. And I've personally seen you selflessly put obscene amount of hours for the betterment of PanIIT, IIT Madras, and other nonprofit organizations. And this is something that I always wanted to know. What makes Monishi and such an amazing high energy person wake up every morning and focus this attention to help others be better?
Well, I have the energy, instinctively, from my childhood, I'm a hyper energetic person. The workday doesn't fill my time. Number 2, I'm very much a people person, and I love to meet people, discuss their problems, and see what we can do, or whether we can form a group idea and see how we can address that. So, it's nice. This is all pro bono that I've done for the last 20 years or so. But, it gives you a good feeling. At the end of it, just a simple pat on the back from somebody and you feel good about it, And mm-hmm. I think that's a good driving force. And also at this moment, since I'm retired and at my age, I'm in the, disclose it's about 73. So I'm saying, before I exit, I want to leave an impact, So I guess that's the major driving force. That's it.
And I think, that's the part where it's more than a pat in the back. You are making an impact in a lot of our lives. And a lot of people I talked to before the interview want to communicate their true love from their heart to you. And they all wish you a very long life selfishly because you do such a lot for us. So in that spirit, I really want to ask you a very personal conversational question. This is something I try to ask every guest. If today, Monishi, you walk into a restaurant and you meet Monishi, 16 years old, and Monishi, 100 years old, what would the conversation with the 16-year-old and the 100-year-old will look like, feel like?
Well, to a 16-year-old, try to fix a certain goal in life which you are targeted towards, and if you misconnect, try to work with certain other alternatives which can yield result. Keep in mind that I didn't want to go to IIT. When I was a young man, I wanted to join the army. My father was an army officer in the Indian Army, and I wanted to join the army. And he told me, he was a middle-ranking officer. He said, "Son, I gave you a good education. Don't you think you'd like to make more out of it? I don't think, the army those days, and I'm talking in the, in the 60s, early 60s, they didn't pay that much. So he said, no, go to the IIT. And fortunately, the IIT was not such a grueling entrance exam. We didn't have that. I mean, today, if I had to sit for the IIT entrance exam, I would not be able to make it. And keep in mind that in my time, I came out with the gold medal. So, things have dramatically changed. I mean, I can't compete in that. I mean, I had a good time when I was a kid, I did all sorts of things. I played games and took part in cultural activities and all that. But today...
that you were a discus throw champion?
Well, more than that, I was a national champion in rowing.
Oh.
And I was an intervarsity champion in boxing. So yeah, I was also a discus and soccer and all that. But I'm just saying that we had an all-rounded life. We didn't ruin our childhood, but today's entry-level IITian, he spends 3 years just trying to get into IIT, which is, it skews the whole system. The person coming out is, not as all-round in their vision as we were in our time,
And what would you ask the 100-year-old Monishi?
I would live to 100, so I wouldn't ask them anything.
Okay. So Monisha, this is such a fascinating conversation. Before we wrap up, 2 things. One is, do you have anything more you want to share with the listeners today?
No, just follow your heart, follow your passion, and make it happen. That's it. Do it.
That's a great advice. So Monishi, you were very kind to answer every question I asked you. Do you have any questions for me?
No, what sort of audience are you targeting?
So Monishi, each one of these differ. So to me, I think we have a lot of startups. We have a lot of people who are in the established business who are trying to take it to the next level. And one of the things that I have seen is in the world where some people thus far were focusing only on a B2B or a B2C, I really think the world we are seeing through this audience it's a B2B2C, because even if you're in a B2B, you really must know the C at the end. And many a time when there's a B2C, a business strategy could be connecting to B. I'll just give you an example of a healthcare app without mentioning names. As they were trying to push and connect in the B2C world, my company, what we found out was the moment we went after cardiologists, the very fact we were going after cardiologists and we were displaying a product with cardiologists, that right away increased the credibility in the B2C market, because now all of a sudden we inherited the association with cardiologists. Just like if I'm hanging out with you, the halo of startup comes to me the same way. So to me, that's the part that is there. So I really appreciate that, everything you shared, because I think it would be really powerful to IIT audience as well as broader audience.
I'd like to make one concluding remark about the India operation. The main reason is we are trying to create a bridge or a corridor between India and the USA. There are Indian startups there, their products can be globalized, and they want to sell to the US market. And our team here can help them out. Similarly, there are US startups here that want to set up offshore development centers in India, or they want to market in India. And the IIT Startups team in India can help them out. So once we create this corridor, which will be the only one of its type, no other colleges, universities attempted this, I think we will have a very powerful set of tools. I believe, give it another 2-3 years, we could be #1 unicorn builder in the world.
Wow. Monishida, that's absolutely fascinating. Thank you, Monishida, for your time today. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely, Monishida. So thank you all for listening, because to me, many a time you hear from a leader who tells you what he or she has done. But today, the way Monishida broke everything down for mentor, mentee, and VC, I really think that he gave us the teaser to what we can do. And if you are up to it, please check up the website. And the website, Monishi, again, is iitstartups.org.
Startups.org. It's plural. IIT Startups with an S at the end, .org.
So thank you all and happy listening. You've been listening to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen, founder and CEO of Zen Mango, top brand growth driver, and a former Fortune 500 executive who has been called one of the most marketing intelligent minds in the business. To learn more, visit www.zenmango.com. Share this podcast with your friends and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.